Hello, welcome to an extra special episode of the NSYNC UK Space Cowboys podcast. This one is dedicated to the release of the new Playing with Fire album. And so, along with your usual Space Cowboys, I'm Sam, and Farina, we are joined by Diana and Farzana, fellow fans from Germany
Hi,
and the US, respectively. Guys, how are you doing?
very
Doing
well,
great.
thank you.
Thank
It's
you.
no, you're welcome. We're so pleased to have you on here because we can get a global view on the new release of the album, and it's so great to have other points of view from other fans as well, outside of the usual nine of us. So thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me on.
For inviting us.
You're very, very welcome. We'll see whether you still appreciate it at the end because this is going to be a jam-packed show. Um, Mentioned that obviously the new Playing with Fire album is out, and that is what this episode's about. It's very much a deep dive. It's not just about NSYNC or JC today. This is something that really taps into our other interests too, and whether that is literature or drama or musicals. This new release from JC and Jimmy really allows us to mix a kind of big family up together of all of our interests. So we're going to really deep dive into it today. And actually, what's really interesting for those listening is we're actually recording this on Halloween. Which feels
Yes.
appropriate, yeah, for the subject matter, in hand.
Ooh.
It's about death and creatures.
Mhm.
But actually, I think as we break down the review of the album more, we're probably going to find we're talking a lot more about other subjects that are covered in there, be it science, technology, love, human connection, the relationship between a father and son. So actually, this is about so much more than a scary monster story, which is going to be really, really interesting to uncover. So we will go through each track song by song, so we can really dive into each of them. But before we do that, let's just take a quick step back so that anyone listening who has been living under a rock for the last month or two and hasn't realized that this album's coming out knows what it is we're talking about. So I guess long story short is that on Friday, the 25th of October, Mr. JC Chasez and his writing partner Jimmy Harry released a musical theatre concept album called Playing with Fire. It's based on the story of Mary Shelley's Frankenstein and specifically a musical adaptation of the play Playing with Fire after Frankenstein by the playwright Barbara Field, who happens to be Jimmy's mother. Um, Alongside the album release, both JC and Jimmy have been doing promotion, including television appearances, radio, podcast, and last night they thrilled all of us fans
Oh,
with
yes.
a 1 hour live YouTube listening party. So, guys, before we jump
Oh,
into the details of the album, let's start. Tell me your first impressions of what's been going on.
what a treat. What a treat for all of us, isn't it? I think I think we're all big Gracie girls anyway, all of us. And it's such a treat for him to go so all out on
Mhm.
the promotion that he's doing currently because although we knew he was going to release an album for a while, we didn't really know whether there was going to be any promotion or not. And um, although they seem to have carefully selected where they go and what they do, it just seems an overwhelming amount at the moment. It's like, you don't know where to turn at the moment because every time you open the internet, there is something else to look at or to listen to or to see. But for me, the live last night actually topped it off. So that
Yeah,
was my
it's been
favorite.
fantastic to see him. I feel like the fans are going to have to come up with a new name for JC because the unicorn, he's just not in. He's just out there now, and so
No.
it's not relevant anymore. He's going to
Yeah.
have a new name. But it has been exciting, hasn't it? And to hear him and Jimmy speaking with such passion, it just gets you excited about this project.
Yes.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Like, I think, having followed his career for so many years and even during the Girl Radical days and everything where he did partner with Jimmy on that, it's great to see this evolution of their musical relationship, I guess. It's going from having this super pop girl group, right, to now going into a musical theater Broadway experience. And that has been like a 10-year journey, right? And so
Mhm.
to see from where they were then to where they are now and the amount of work that's been done in the process, it's quite impressive, right? And I think that having kind of been there as a fan along the way, it creates this huge sense of pride and
Yeah.
just in what they've done, because it really is a great work of art.
Yes.
Yeah, it really is. And I think we said there's so many angles and facets to this that I think as we go through the album, we're going to really uncover how creative and how clever it is, and almost the connection between one song to another, to the songs and the play, almost little Easter eggs hidden throughout
Mhm.
the songs is going to be really exciting to uncover. Diana, what was your first impression when you first listened to the album on release day?
Well, when I heard that he was working on a musical, I was really very, very curious. What I love about JC is that he's so curious. He doesn't just stay within one certain part of the music industry. He really tries a little bit here and tries something here and tries something there. And then he finds something that he's really intrigued by, and he goes all in and he explores it. And it is, I feel very, very lucky that he has Jimmy, because Jimmy has already written musicals. So he had someone that he knew and that he trusted, that he could go to and say, listen, I'm interested in this. I was on the performing side because he was supposed to do Jesus Christ Superstar. That
Mhm.
unfortunately didn't work out, but he was already going that direction. And with Jimmy, he had someone he could go to and say, listen, you are already experienced. I want to do this. Can we do this together? And then the waiting was hard. The waiting was hard because there is so much work to put into until we get to see or hear anything. That was the hardest part. And I was so excited when he finally announced that they would release something. And yeah, the snippets were amazing. And that's when I was pretty sure that the album would be really good, because I already loved the snippets from the get-go. They were already great.
And
Yeah.
and sorry.
Go,
I wanted
go
to
ahead.
No,
just
no.
I wanted to chime in as well here with regard to um, it's not just JC's vocals on there. I think the whole body of work is really impressive. Like, one of my favorite tracks on this album is Playing with Fire. I love the dynamics of it. I love the way that it's built, and I love the way that it makes me feel. Like, I think it's such a great song and such a lovely track, and really summarizes everything that's going on in the musical. So, um, I think a lot of people are happy to hear JC again. I know I am. Like, I'm happy to hear his voice again. But knowing the amount of work and care that went into this is also just super impressive.
Yeah, it really is. And I think when we mentioned earlier that obviously Playing with Fire is written by Barbara Field, who's Jimmy's mother. And obviously he lost her back in 2021. And I think to be able to honor her by bringing to life her work in a different way is something that must be so special for them. And also I think for
Mhm.
JC, something that he really seems to have got on board with. And they've spoken a lot during their promotion about how this started, and Jimmy giving JC the play to read and how he just felt this connection to it. And I think those topics we're going to look into that are more than just about death and monsters and creature creation and stuff like that is something that I think seems to really strike a chord with him, and in fact both of them. And that I think is what probably then inspires people's best work, when they're really truly passionate about something.
Yeah, what I think is really interesting is Jimmy said in one interview that he had already tried to find someone before to work on the play and to possibly, I don't know if I got this right, to possibly turn it into something musical. He had already done this before. And at some point, when JC approached him and asked him, can we do something? He was thinking about Playing with Fire and giving it to him to read and see whether something would come out of it. I've only heard this once from Jimmy, but he talked about that. So it's not that this idea from Jimmy's side to do something with this play was completely new. It just came up again. And luckily with JC. And talking about the voices, I think that JC couldn't have performed the way that it is necessary for the character that he is embodying like he is now. Because what you need for his for Victor, not for Victor, for Adam and for the creature is life experience, especially for the creature. You
Yeah.
need this life experience and you need to hear it in his voice. He couldn't, it wouldn't have been as good would this role have come to him for him to sing 20, 25 years ago.
Oh no, absolutely not.
So
No, I
I
agree with that.
think
Yeah.
it is not, when I read the People interview and I read that he said that he's not in his prime, he's not 21 years anymore. I say that's just completely wrong. You're always in your prime, always. But it just depends on the roles that you put on. It depends on the roles that you choose. So
Yeah.
with actors, you cannot play a young, youthful, jumping around lover at the age of 80. You play a different role, but you do it perfectly because it fits you right at that moment in time. And I believe that the way he performed the creature in Adam is just perfect right now. He's got the perfect voice for it. He's got the perfect mind for it. And he's got the perfect life experience for it. Just like Victor and Elizabeth. These are two young people in this piece. So the voices of Lily and of Cardi are just absolutely perfect for this. So it's been so brilliantly chosen who sings what part, and it just fits. And they all are so, so brilliant in getting the emotion across. You can have a perfectly sung piece and feel nothing. So you need the emotion behind it for it to connect.
Yeah.
And that's been done beautifully.
And just speaking of Cardi and their voice, how the voices mesh so well together. Cardi and JC's, like on my first listen, that was my very first impression, was like, my gosh, these two voices were made for each other in the sense of this production and in this work.
Yeah.
I think that it just evokes this feeling like I don't know how to, like, this realism that this is happening. And I think that was my very first impression, like outside of the excitement of everything, like just having a good listen. It was that, wow, what a perfect blend
Yeah.
of these voices.
Well, they did say, I don't know how many people they recorded.
20 or 30.
Yeah.
That's right.
And then Cardi was the last one, right? So, you know, they definitely saved the best for last. I mean, that must have been magical when they sang together for the first time. You know, it's just the way they match is incredible. And also Cardi's voice is in every song. It's so different the way he's able to utilize it. He is so unbelievably talented. And what he brings to this album is I'm gonna edit this out.
I was gonna say, please correct yourself. I caught it too. Caught it too.
What they bring to the album is just you can't even measure it, I think. Well, for both of them, you know, for Lily and Cardi, I think it's just immeasurable what they bring to the album. I don't think we can underestimate it. You know, so many people are talking all about JC's voice, but the album wouldn't be complete
It's a
without
team effort.
these particular
It's
two
a
people.
team effort.
Do you know?
Unfortunately, they have kind of ruined it for us, though, haven't they? Like, in a way, like once it comes on stage, I don't want to see anybody else doing these songs, right? We want to see those guys doing these songs. So, you know, if they're going to do a concert or if they're going on tour with it, I hope they can do it with these two people. I mean, that would be insane, right?
I was going to say as well, with Lily's voice, now knowing from the video that was released today, when Jimmy was saying that Lily hadn't sung opera before, but they wanted that opera feel.
Mhm.
Whenever those first clips of Lily were released, I was like, this is an accomplished like opera singer. You know, like
Yeah.
I was thinking like this she makes it so effortless. And it's just beautiful. It's
Wait,
just beautiful. And there's no way I would have thought that Lily wouldn't have had opera experience prior
no,
to that.
no, I would have thought they picked her based on that, that um something they might have known about her, that she has got, that kind of experience. But yeah, I was quite surprised to hear that she doesn't. Quite amazing. Clearly they must have seen that in her, that she's able to do this. So, I mean, Tardy also sounds operatic at times, I think, he's done it again. I'm Jimmy today. Call me Jimmy. I'm gonna cut this out. Sorry. I'm the editor. I can say whatever I want. Right, go ahead.
Cool. Yeah, I think the voices of all three together, like you say, they're the perfect blend together. There's, as we go through the track list, I think we'll maybe wait till we go through song by song, but there's so many examples of just how well they play off each other as well, and
Mhm.
how you can just close your eyes and see this story come to life because they sound so not only well blended together, but so perfectly matched for the characters that they play. And I think to Diana's point about JC, the same is said for Lily and Cardi as well, that they all just really fit what you imagine to be these characters. So I mean, we said we'd go through the playlist, the track list, and I think that's really important because ultimately it follows the story of Playing with Fire. And we obviously know that they began writing How Do You Sleep, but actually track one is This Is How the World Ends. And for me, this is a really lovely scene setup for the entire musical. So for those who aren't aware, the musical is set at, by the way, let's stop for a second. There are spoilers in this. We may be telling you a little bit too late in. Perhaps we'll put a message on the right description of the episode. But this is very much a spoiler heavy episode. So if you don't know the story of Frankenstein or Playing with Fire and don't want to know until you've watched or read it, don't listen. Come back in a minute or 120. Yeah, so it's set at the grave site of Elizabeth. And of course, now correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm telling this story, but Victor Frankenstein is looking to ultimately kill the creature that he created. And the play takes you through the conversation that Victor Frankenstein and the creature have. And ultimately, the creature wants answers as much as Victor does, as to what happened all those years ago. And so the scene is set between the grave site and then ultimately flashbacks to what happened during the story of Frankenstein. So I think when This Is Where the World Ends begins, it literally sets the scene, once upon a time, the lyrics go, and it's I think just bringing the audience in to remind them and of what the story is about, so that we can then go from there.
Yeah, I think when she first starts singing about this is really just a reminder of everything that's happened in the original Frankenstein story that everybody knows, really. So it just sets it up in just a few full of sentences. It just sets up the whole thing, doesn't it?
What I find
Yeah.
interesting, what really, when I read the first line, "This is how the world ends," it already hints the last scene.
Yes, it
Because
does.
Jimmy
Yeah.
has already said how they want the musical to end. They already have an idea for the end, and the end of it is the
And
world
the world
ends, like
ends. Yeah.
literally does.
Supernova.
And I think that's really clever. You don't know it when it starts, of course, but at the end of the play, you go like, wait a second. When they started with the first song, this is how the world ends. We are at the end of the world, at the end of time. It's quite an interesting detail.
Yeah, I think so. It's, as I say, I can't use any other word but an Easter egg. It almost is. It's just, it's so clever that it's literally linked, and that they've written this obviously based on the play, but they've really cleverly probably considered what their storytelling is, potentially come back to it to make sure that it links from start to finish. And I love that. And I think, we'll get to playing with fire later, but of course that has, this is where the world ends in that song as well. So it just starts to tie through as you get towards that end and that kind of big supernova that Jimmy's been describing in his interviews.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I think what I envision, like, I can see it in my head, right? The stage is set, the scene is set, and here comes Elizabeth out on stage in her lavender dress, right? And singing "This is how the world ends," and just everything is already there. You have Victor, you have the creature in the background, frozen, and they're just talking about what's happening. And then you know, when that song ends, it then illuminates the stage and you get right into How Do You Sleep. And I love how it just sets it in that way, like where everything's frozen and then it starts after that song ends. That's how I envision it.
I'm curious to know, what scene did you all have in mind, how it could be staged? What could the beginning look like? Because I thought in the play, it says in the beginning that the stage should be like really empty, like close to zero props. And I immediately saw like a curtain, a see-through curtain with Frankenstein and the creature in the front, like they are the present, and with Victor and Elizabeth and Adam behind the curtain. So that's the flashback. So you have the kind of, and you jump back and forth between the two, and you have the curtain and the people behind the curtain at the very back of the stage. And when the musical progresses and goes on, the curtain and the people come to the forefront. They come to the front more and more because, of course, the flashbacks come to the present. They catch up. And at the end, you have the two colliding, and that's the end of the world. So that was on my mind when it comes to staging and how to actually do it, because you've got those characters there twice. You've got Adam and the creature, and you've got Victor and the older Frankenstein. So how can you do this on stage? And that was like the idea that came to my mind immediately.
It's going to be different actors, though, isn't it? For the younger
Sure,
one and the
for
older
sure.
one. It's got to be so. So they can be on the stage at the same time. I really wonder. I mean, it depends on who's going to be the production company is at the end, but I really wonder if it's going to be like a very lavish production or if it's going to be really, really stripped down. I'd be really interested to see what they envision, because obviously whatever the production companies want to do, they have to have their input on, how they envision this. So I imagine it quite stripped down, like you say. I don't think it's going to be, it's not going to be like a Disney production,
No, but I think that that's a really interesting point though about the kind of time jump between the present day where the play starts and obviously the flashbacks, and I agree, having read the play and its description of the set being very neutral. It's set in the North Pole but no snow, no realistic interiors, it says, and I wonder if it's almost like you say, that very basic minimalistic set, black and white almost, for
yeah.
the kind of gravesite setting, and then when you get to the flashbacks, that's the more lavish style, and like you say, it ultimately come down to a decision between the director, the artistic director, and JC and Jimmy. But you imagine songs like "You Used to Touch Me" or even "Death at the Brides," where they're just screaming out for some kind of activity and action on stage with regards to choreography, and therefore you've got to imagine, so maybe that's where the more elaborate costumes come in, or lighting and color comes in to match those things, as well as different sets, such as in the the creature ultimately is created and built and put together. What's that going to look like in this kind of environment there? And so I think it could be a bit of a blend of both. And I think it's an interesting point, Diana, whether it's the front and the back of the stage, or whether it's a lower level and a higher level, and whether they use height. But somehow I feel like there would be some kind of distinct difference between
I
one and
think
the
when
other
it
for
comes to
sure.
props, I would think the gravestone, Elizabeth's gravestone, with the back to the audience, so you can't read what's on the gravestone. And at the end of the play, when Elizabeth actually goes away and dies, you turn the gravestone around to the audience, so the audience sees this is Elizabeth's grave. And I see a dissecting table, and the rest could be done with purely visuals, whether you project them on this curtain or on the back on some sort of screen. You can act very quickly, you can change like the visual of the stage very quickly. But I think the focus is very, very much, because it is about the emotions, very much on the people on stage, and not that much. I think a lot of props would just distract, in my opinion. So that's why I'm with Verena. I think it will be very stripped down to the absolute essentials. And the gravestone and the dissecting table, I can see, because they are really important for this whole story that they're telling. But other than that, I'm not too sure whether they're going to use a lot.
Well, I guess there's only one way for us to find out, and it's exciting to hear that they're speaking to directors and producers about this. So hopefully, through those conversations and the workshops that they're planning to do, they might start to uncover and reveal more of their thoughts as to this. And I hope
Jimmy keeps saying it's going to be like 30 years from now, but I don't think it's going to be that long. I mean, it's not going to be 30 years, obviously, but I really think it's going to happen faster than they think, especially with this album out now. And, it's already causing a stir, right? So I think
yeah.
the theatre companies will be interested in this.
Yeah, 100%. It seems to be getting such momentum going on it, and I think anyone would love to be part of that. So let's go into the second song then, which is "How Do You Sleep?" This was the first song that the guys said they actually wrote, and it's such a powerful song. And ultimately, this takes us now to the very beginning of the actual Playing with Fire play, where Frankenstein opens with "Do you dream? Do you sleep?" And that's what this is based on, is then this conversation between both Frankenstein and the creature. What are your thoughts on this one?
Yeah, that's the one thing I caught right up front, was how they flipped that around, where it's "Do you sleep? Do you dream?" in the lyrics, rather than "Do you dream? Do you sleep?" which is in the play. I thought that was a nice way to kind of honor the original play by borrowing some of the words. And again, it's just, I think that's an Easter egg in itself, and that's a callback.
Yeah, it is. It's so nice to see that actually brought through into the wording and stay true, albeit they've been kind of, obviously embellished on it with the entire track.
When you go into the lyrics themselves, the first thing I saw was when you listen to the words of Frankenstein, he is a complete scientist at this moment, and he is like observing his project. He doesn't acknowledge this thing in front of him as a creature that has a conscious mind. He's almost like talking to himself, like, are you working? What are you doing? Can you sleep? Can you dream? Can you taste chocolate? It's not really, it doesn't feel like he's talking to the creature. He's more talking to himself, I feel like wondering how this thing works. Because, I mean, as soon as it was alive, he ran. So he has no idea what really happened after, and he seems to be wanting to catch up. What happened then? So that's to me, that's what the beginning of the song feels like.
In the part where the creature says, "You've chased me to the end of the world," that's another Easter egg for "This Is How the World Ends."
Yeah.
right? So when you look at the explanation or the setting on their website of where this is, right? This is where they have that kind of confrontation at the gravesite. And so they are literally, it almost feels like it's going backwards at this point. And I know that's what it is. It's a reflection of all the things that have happened and a collection of all the things that have happened. But just that chase me to the end of the world, tying it back to this is how the world ends. I just really like the creative use of words there.
Yeah, I do too. And I think the fact that, you know, like you say, it's set at the graveside, but this is Frankenstein coming to ultimately kill the creature because he's been looking for him all over to get to this point, and he's literally, yeah, chased him to this point. Is just, I think, so clever the way they've written that in. And then I think also where you've got, you know, a lot of tell me, they're asking each other these questions. And this is one of the songs, by the way, where I really love the relationship between Frankenstein and the creature's characters and how they interact with each other. And there's this back and forward that they have kind of towards the kind of maybe final third of the song where you know, how do you sleep when you're a nightmare, says Frankenstein. You made me what I am. I'm standing right here. I gave you life. You left me to die. An abomination, a sin against God, made in your image, I am your son. It's just, there's such a backwards and forwards, not only in the way they're singing you know, at the same time and harmonizing with each other, but in the way that the actual script is or the lyrics are written to interact with each other. And I just think this is such a fascinating, such a powerful song, and really sets the scene for this kind of push and pull between the two characters. And they've actually ultimately both got things they want to say to each other.
Isn't
And
that something? Oh, I was going to say, isn't that something where they don't know what each other's
Mm.
lived experiences, and
Yeah.
they're literally dying to know what it is. Diana, go ahead.
the lyrics that you just read out, Sam, it's also the first time that you see an actual conversation between the two of them, like the back and forth. The beginning of the song was Frankenstein more talking to himself, more having a monologue kind of thing, and then Creature answering with a kind of monologue. But this is the actual first back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. And it is also the first time you see Frankenstein kind of defend himself. I gave you life. What do you want from me? I gave you life. Be grateful for that. So it's the first time he's, I don't want to say attacks him, but it's the first time you see that I did something. I did something good. I gave you life. Appreciate that, first of all.
Yeah.
And then you have Creature that said, you made me in your image. I'm your son. That's also a really, really powerful part of the song. Like
Yeah.
these words, to use these words, made in your image and I'm your son. It's not like I'm a creature, you made me, whatever. But those words especially, they are really, really powerful in this song.
Yeah, exactly. And I think Frankenstein goes on to say, you're just some broken pieces I collected. And it's at this point really him not maybe appreciating what the creature feels as his son, and that he was just this experiment. And I think we will come on to Father later, but there's a similar kind of vibe, I think, partway through Father, when he says, you know, does this, what's the lyrics? I haven't got to this one yet, but does this reflect your moral outrage? What am I thinking of here? What is the lyric? Hang on.
It's the moral outrage one as you're thinking about that. I
Yeah, your sense
interpret
of,
that almost as like a high horse type thing, where it's like, well, you know, does that satisfy what you're looking for? You know what I mean? Like that's what I think it sounds like.
yeah, it says, just does that soothe your sense of moral outrage? And I kind of think that's why it's interesting again that he's still got this kind of attitude similar to How Do You Sleep, where he is saying you're an abomination, you're a sin sin against God, you'll just break complete pieces. It's almost this sense of he doesn't get where the creature is coming from, because he's on such a different page at this point as to how and why he was created.
And at this point, Frankenstein also doesn't know what the creature went through because he wasn't there. He only knows the pure creation process, but he doesn't know what the creature's been through. The creature's telling him, now, let me tell you my story. You made me, and then you left me behind, and I had to find my way into a form of life all on my own. And that process, Frankenstein doesn't know yet.
No,
Exactly. Go ahead, Sam.
No, go.
I was saying that when it comes to understanding the experience, once again, and I think they are so wrapped up in their own world, in their own needs, what they want, right? Later on, you have the creature asking for someone to love, right? Their own intrinsic needs or their own things. They don't think about the experience of the other person. And now that they're at the end, they truly are curious. Like, it's not just they're angry with each other, whatever. They are truly trying to understand each other's experience.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that almost then leads on into the third song of You Used to Touch Me, where the creature continues on to explain, I guess, his feelings and how that's impacted him and affected him. So, the story of you used to touch me when you formed me and you created me and stitched together my parts. And I think the line is, you used to rub your hands all over my body, but ultimately he's then telling the story, but you don't do that anymore. You can't even look at me anymore. And I think this is just further telling the story of explaining to Frankenstein, who he sees as his father, the impact that it's had on him.
When we go into You Used to Touch Me, there is a line where the creature says, you say that you don't love me no more. It's like the creature envisions himself as his son, and the victor still sees him as his project. So they're coming from two completely different points of view. And I think this is a very important part, especially for Frankenstein, to really learn what the creature has been going through after he ran away. Because he's born like zero. He's there and he's trying to figure out what's happening around him. Where am I? What's going on and everything. And we start to slowly get into this process, and he demands answers. And what I find so interesting about this song is when you look at it as a standalone song, I mean, it has this sexual connotation to it when you listen to it by itself. But when you put it into the story, you see that he uses this to really poke at Frankenstein. Like, come on, react to it. And he would say, what are you talking about? This is not what it was. I just assembled pieces of you. So he's really using that kind of voice to provoke Frankenstein to the limit. He wants to really send him over the edge. And that's what is so interesting about using that kind of language that can be totally misleading, but it is used specifically to really, really get Frankenstein, tip him over the edge and provoke a reaction. Now, I am outraged. I want to see you come out of your shell, say something, explain yourself. And that's just absolutely brilliantly used in this song.
Yeah.
The part where it says, oh, but now you haunt me like a psycho, venting all your rage. You say that you don't want me no more, but you can't leave me alone. I find that very interesting, right? Because to your point, Diana, it's like Victor's sending mixed signals. Like it's like Victor's sending mixed signals to to Adam slash the creature, right? Um, by saying like, okay, I thought you don't want me. I thought you don't want anything to do with me. But now, like, just get off my back. Like just leave me alone. Like that's what I find whenever I just isolate the lyrics. And yes, I am in the camp that thinks that this needs to be a single. Just I think this is the most commercial pop song that they could probably do from this collection if they chose to go that route. But
I do think
um,
there's a reason why this is written the way it is as a standalone song.
yeah.
I don't think we have all the information yet, but
Mm.
it's very obvious in the style of writing that this is quite set apart from all of the other songs on this album, although it fits perfectly, but it also doesn't have to fit. It could be used for anything. This, for a very different situation. This song, I think there's a reason for it for sure.
And it's such clever songwriting because
Mhm.
depending on how you look at it, what situation you put into it, you can read so much out of it. You can
Mhm.
use, you can interpret it in so many different ways. And that's, to me, is the most masterful of songwriting there is when you can use it in different situations and it does get different meanings. You get different meanings out of it and different messages out of it. And that's why I absolutely love it. It's one of my absolute favorites for this reason,
Mhm.
because there's so many ways to read between the lines. It's absolutely brilliant.
Mhm. I love it. It's
Yeah.
my favorite. It's my favorite of this album.
Yeah,
Same.
my favorite
Mhm.
changes. I can't decide. Depends. Every day it's a different one because that's just
Mhm.
the beauty of this album, right? I'll tell you what I really love about this musically is that whilst the creature is in various songs across the album, um, this song of You Used to Touch Me, Father, and Death of the Brides have a very similar vibe in terms of they're more up tempo, they're more aggressive in maybe the way it's being sung. And it's almost like this is the creature's calling card, and this is how you can recognize
Mhm.
him. And I don't know if it's I must admit, I haven't really looked into whether that's a difference between the creature and Adam. And of course, at the very end, Don't Go is very different. But I just find it really fascinating that you kind of go, here comes the creature again with this kind of really a good
He's a
beat and
force.
up tempo. Yeah, isn't it?
He is a force.
And
Yeah, literally, and the music fits him.
and just so you are aware, on in the lyric books, it
Mm,
actually labels who says what. So this song is sung by the creature.
yeah,
So it's there. So it says like, like the How Do You Sleep is sung by the creature in Frankenstein. You Used to Touch Me is done by the creature. Um, you don't see Adam until, hold on. I mean, I don't even see Adam here until Adam doesn't
Father.
come in until Father.
And then look at Father. Adam sings the soft bits at the beginning, and then it
Yeah.
changes to the creature when you have the you can't close your eye, the kind of
Yeah.
more again aggressive side. You see what I mean? And then the bit where the beat picks up and the tempo comes. So every time the tempo comes again, it goes hard again. And really only Don't Go, I think, is the biggest example of where it's a very soft song, and that is attributed to the creature, not Adam. But the rest of the album,
That's super interesting that you point that out because that is absolutely right as they kind of
Mm.
split it up that way. The
mm,
softer, gentler side is Adam, and the more aggressive, angry side is the creature.
yeah. I think so. And I say I just noticed that when we're talking about You Used to Touch Me, which is down as the creature. And again, you've got that real different tempo compared to the first two songs that we've already experienced at this point. And I just love that there's that kind of this is almost his like theme tune, so to speak, albeit the tracks are different to each other, but his style comes through.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So I have to go,
Oh
but I
no.
hope I've contributed
You
something,
have.
and I appreciate you having me be part of this, and I hope that some of my parts make it in. But
Make sure
thank you.
V's not too heavy on this. No, honestly, thank you so much. It's been great. And yeah, we're gonna keep deep
I-
diving through the
I
rest.
just edit
but,
myself out. I don't edit anybody else out. I just edit myself out. I'm
Okay. I will say one more thing about Death of the Brides. That one is interesting to what you just said, Sam, because that's Adam and Frankenstein. That's not the creature. So
Curious,
that's super interesting how
isn't
they
it?
have that labeled
Yeah.
as Adam throughout the whole song.
Yeah, that is really interesting because I say it for me, I get that similar sense of style with
I
the
would
way
never
the
have
music is
thought
used
that's
on.
Adam. There's
No,
no way I would have thought that's Adam.
no.
Yeah, it's I'm just looking ahead and it's Adam, and then I mean Build Me Someone to Love is Adam. So I
Yeah,
think your theory is
yeah, I get
correct,
that.
but in the Death of the Brides, I'm just even looking at the I'll Be With You on Your Wedding Night. That's still Adam. So I think that's super interesting. So I'll
I
leave you with
wouldn't.
that.
Leave us
Yeah.
with that. We'll get to that. We'll get to it when we get to the
You can
rest.
edit that in to like whenever
Mhm.
you talk
Yeah,
about that song.
yeah.
But anyways, thank you. Thank you
No,
for
thank
being
you.
a part of it. You
You.
take
You
care.
too.
Have a great night, everyone.
You
Bye.
too. Good night.
Bye.
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 Okay, then there were three. Um, let's carry on then and look at, song 4, which is Broken. Super, super emotional, quite difficult song. Now, the guys themselves, JC and Jimmy, said that this took them a month to write, that some days they came and they wrote 5 words because they really wanted to get this right and approach it sensitively and to do it justice, because this is the next track which really has a real change, and ultimately this is a, for want of a better word, flashback scene back
Mhm.
to when Victor's mother dies, and obviously in this version of Frankenstein that is through childbirth. So what are your thoughts on this one, guys?
It was very, very hard to listen to.
Mhm.
It was very, when I listened to it, I was starting to shake.
Oh,
And I
wow.
really felt my blood run cold when the song finished. I really had to stop the CD and catch my breath for a minute or two. It's just really, really hard to listen to. It's beautiful and I really love it. But oh, that's tough. It's really, really tough. But it reflects the trauma of the 2 young people. And I think for that to really hit, it needed to be that deep. And it's also
Yeah.
very graphic because
Yeah.
in the play, Elizabeth is not present in the room where it happens. She's outside of the room because Victor asks her, have you been there? Have you witnessed this? And she said, no, I was waiting outside. And your father came out after everything had already happened. And to me, in this song, it seems like Elizabeth was in the room and she witnessed it
Yes.
herself. She said, we had to cut her open. And then she says, my heart is broken. No, my head is broken. I can't unsee the horrors I saw. So she was in the room. At least that's how this is sung.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that is a slight change in the storyline there, isn't it? To put this into that. And one thought that we discussed separately to today's episode is whether or not this is her speaking to him face to face, or if it's also maybe more in the style that she's written him a letter. Now, the original Frankenstein, of course, is a series of letters, and we wondered whether this was also potentially some kind of a link back to that. So, the way she's telling him the news. I don't know what your thoughts are there, but I'm sorry for your loss. It feels like quite a formal way that she's speaking to
Mhm.
him. And so there is some kind of question as to whether this is a verbal conversation or whether it is through the form of letters.
Yeah, it does seem little bit more like a letter to me as well. The way everything is like described sentence by sentence, like how everything happened, like all the events. It's just explained very brief. Every sentence is like a different, something that happened. So it does seem more like a letter to me than a face-to-face conversation.
Yeah, yeah. The bit that makes me think though, actually about the staging, which then confuses me slightly because I go, okay, maybe this is face to face, and I'd be interested to know your thoughts because I don't know if I'm maybe reading the lyrics wrong or if there is something in this, and it's only a tiny point, but the very first couple of lines that Elizabeth sings, she says, "You must call him William after your father. William's such a sober name for that tiny," and it almost feels like she hasn't finished her sentence, like for that tiny boy, for that tiny
Baby.
baby, for that tiny person. And it's almost like I can't help but think and picture this on stage and imagine the acting that will go into that. And she's almost like maybe caught herself and got lost in her thoughts for a second before she then continues on again with Victor, Victor as she opens the song.
Mm-hmm.
And so if that is the case, then that's why there seems to be a word missing, at least in the way I read it or listen to it. I think the way, obviously, it's a very emotional song, and I can just almost start to picture how they might try and convey that um, emotion over on stage, not just in the lyrics and the music, but also in the acting part of it as well. So I'm really curious to see how that bit is played out. Just a tiny, a tiny section about the tiny word, but yeah, it makes me wonder. It feels like a word's missing to me, and I think it's purposeful.
The beginning of the song feels like she is approaching Victor actually, and it's like when you nudge somebody, go, hey, hey, are you listening to me? Victor, Victor, you have a little brother. She said if it was a boy, do this to this, and she goes like for the tiny Victor, Victor, are you listening to me? Are you hearing what I'm saying? So this is what the first few lines give me. Like he's absent, and she tries to get to him and say, listen to me, something's happened, I need to tell you. And it feels like he doesn't want, and that's when the play comes in handy when you've read it. Because in the beginning, when he approaches him, he's almost like he's very absent. He just slowly comes to his senses, and he is slowly starting to listen to her and to talk to her. So at the beginning, it seemed more like it was a real conversation, like her approaching him
Yeah.
because he waited outside, and she coming in to break the news to him, what happened, and he already has a feeling about it. And then the rest really sounds a little bit like you said, like it was a letter. So I'm curious to see what actually comes out of it, because the
Yeah.
beginning is more or less like she approaches him, like I said, Victor, Victor, I have something to tell you. And he goes like, oh, nah, I'm not here. This is not true. I'm not seeing things. I'm not hearing things. This is not happening.
Yeah, that sounds right, and that then I think makes more sense in my mind as to where I say that I think this moment of emotion in the acting comes through with this um for that tiny it comes into it. And I think the other thing about this song that I wanted to cover was that ultimately this is the part of the song that really starts to explain why he went on this journey that he did into the science that he did to ultimately create the creature and study death. Because there's the line that Elizabeth sings where she says, it's eating me alive like cancer in my mind, thinking that I so want to be a mother, but I don't want to die like that. And then later on, she says, I'm so scared. And this is really, I think, what starts to spark Victor's ultimate obsession into saving Elizabeth, and making her almost immortal, so that she doesn't have to die, and he doesn't have to lose her. And this is just such a crucial part of that storyline.
What is
Just
interesting is that he doesn't try. I mean, that's becoming pretty obvious later on, but he doesn't try to save her from dying. That's not his point. He tries to find a way to bring her back to life when she dies.
Mm.
That's what he's striving for. That's what he wants to find out. And That's what I see, but I think that becomes a little more clear later on that
Mhm.
is his goal. He wants to be
Yeah.
able to bring someone back to life. And that's, I think, why he chose dead body parts and assembled dead body parts, because he needed a dead body to relive it,
Mhm.
to get to this point.
Yeah.
But this song starts it all. This is like the beginning of Victor's journey, and that's what it is in it.
Yeah, exactly. It really is, which is interesting because then the next song is called The Beginning, which ultimately then starts off onto this, I guess, relationship between Victor and Elizabeth, and their discussion between each other, and him saying that he wants to save you forever. And it really just then, I think, continues on that storytelling from what we've just kind of uncovered, perhaps through our what we've sensed and taken from the storytelling of the lyrics of the previous song. This is now them actually explicitly telling us that this is how they're feeling about each other.
Yeah, in the beginning, we see that Victor's made his decision. I am going away to study this. I've made my mind up. I want to go there. I want to find out. He's made his decision. Now he's clear about it. And it's basically the beginning of this journey. And then when Elizabeth starts to sing, she basically says, goodbye for now. You're leaving now to do something. And she says, it hurts when you're not with me.
Mhm.
So she knows he's going away for a while. And he starts his journey.
Yeah, exactly. Which ultimately then takes you into 1/r² as the next song, which is a really interesting thing that Jimmy and JC have revealed in the creation of this album, which was ultimately they initially wrote this as a two-part duet between Victor and actually his professor, which I don't know how to say this. Am I saying it correctly? Professor Krem, who is ultimately the
Krempe.
sixth Krempe, right? There we
Krempe.
go. I knew I'd do it wrong. And the play states at the beginning that there are actually six characters in this play. There is Frankenstein the creature, Victor, Adam the creature, Elizabeth, and Professor Krempe. And they actually took the decision to remove him from their musical adaptation and as such replace him and ultimately elevate Elizabeth's presence in the musical and into this song. And I have to say, this, I think, is one of my favorite songs. I say it changes all the time. I just think it is such a sweet song. It's so cleverly written. I love the lyrics of this one and the sense that I think the guys themselves are very proud that they've got this 1/r². You know, who else has ever done this? They joke about. And I just think this is such a really lovely song that I almost can't imagine how it would be now with the professor in it.
Especially because I put mosquitoes in it.
Yes, what makes the grass grow and all the mosquitoes.
Yeah, it talks about science really, and they're exploring it. They're trying to find all the secrets and
Mm.
understand where things come from and why things are the way they are. So they're educating themselves. They're curious about life and how,
Mhm.
where does life come from? How does it work? So they're now
Yeah,
exploring everything, trying to understand. It's a
yeah,
curiosity that children have. They want to know how everything works.
yeah, exactly. And that's why they're questioning, what makes the sun burn and cut through the darkness, and all these other questions, what makes the earth spin on the right axis. So you've got this real curious and wonder element of the song, but then you've also got this real romantic side where, whisper your dreams in my ear, what inspires you, nothing's off limit. You share, and I'll try to explain to what. And there's just that real other side of the song where it's not just about learning stuff. It's this real development of them as a couple and their love and the romantic connection between the pair.
Yeah, it's also the curiosity about each other.
Mm,
And when she goes like, I really want to know what's going on your mind.
yeah.
So tell me, I want to know more about you as well. I want to know what you're thinking. I want to know how you tick.
Yeah, exactly. And this is ultimately part one of 1 over r squared. And it actually doesn't follow on directly with part 2. It then jumps into I Found Death at the University, which is ultimately Frankenstein, then, like you say, developing that story further, as to how his work was carried out. And what I find fascinating about this one is, and I'd love to know when they're working on the direction of the musical itself, is how they chose which part of the story is in the music and which part of the story is perhaps spoken on stage. Because obviously this one particularly explains the experiment with the bullfrog and him testing out his theories and bringing them to life. And I think musically, I love the more dark vibe that this style that this song gives off, compared to the more quite poppy 1 over r squared just before, and suddenly drops into this. It really matches the theme of death at the university.
I think what you also see, his ego comes out for the first time. And I think it reflects in the style of the music as well, because it is darker. It feels like it's not that much anymore about Elizabeth and wanting to save her and want to make sure that she's okay. His ego comes out more. Now he's like, I am the scientist. Do you think you question your reasons? It would have been immoral not to pursue it. To be the first, led into gold, refuse into flesh. It's especially these few words, to be the first, that are in this song that really show that he's more and more and more about himself, about what he wants to achieve, how he wants to be seen as a scientist. He wants these goals, he wants the success, and he wants to earn his flowers. And that comes out more and more. So he's getting more and more into the obsession and less about the original wish of him and his original desire to protect the woman that he loves. It becomes more and more about him. And that's what it also comes out beautifully in this song. And that's why this dark vibe also fits it so well, because he's basically turning and he's going over to the dark side.
Yeah, which then when you go on to our 1 over r squared part 2, again, musically, it's actually very more aligned to I Found Death at the University than it is to part 1. Now, there's absolute connections between part 1 with, really obvious things in the lyrics of literally 1 over r squared. But the actual kind of, I don't know what the right way to phrase it is, but the beats and the pace of the song, and it kind of, I won't be able to do a good impression of it, but this kind of boom, boom, boom goes from one song to the other, and it continues. I think you're right, that feeling of this darkness and this ego that has taken over away from him. And ultimately, this is then a song where him and Elizabeth seem to be in conflict with each other, because she's returned to the scene and is saying, what are you doing? You're playing with fire here. You need to think about these consequences. But he's so wrapped up in what he's doing. And I think, therefore, that's why the music matches what the change in tone is between the two of them, because suddenly she's worried about how he has changed, and she notices how he's changed.
Yeah, and I think, is it the first time we actually hear the words playing with fire in 1 over r squared, part 2? It's the first time we get to hear this, and it's the first time that someone actually steps forward and goes like, oh, I think something is seriously wrong here. And this could end in a catastrophe. It's like Elizabeth it's the first time when Elizabeth starts to sing, where she goes like, you're a boy playing with fire. This is the first time we really hear someone in this whole piece say, oh, this is going wrong.
Yeah,
in that
exactly.
moment.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that kind of push and pull between the two characters is fascinating, because she really is calling him out for that. And I think there was a really interesting interview with JC that we listened to this week, where he was speaking about the literal dangers of playing with fire and how powerful it is. And it's really interesting that you point out that this is the first time it comes in, as the play's name. and really ultimately sets that position for what is so risky about what Victor is doing. Um, I just I actually really love this one. I say part one is personally a favorite of mine just because of I love the cuteness of the lyrics in that one. But part two just really is so deep in their relationship and the impact that it's having on both of them. I just find it fascinating.
First time we're going into consequences.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly, isn't it?
It's still before he brings the creature to life, but it's the
Yeah,
first time that consequences come up. And this consequences, they're becoming louder and louder and louder. And this is the beginning of the consequences coming into play
yeah, absolutely. And
and coming
I think
more and more to the forefront.
yeah, it really is. And he's just not accepting it either. He's saying to her, please don't intervene. Just leave. You just need to leave me alone, which is a complete step change from how they were before, because I think he doesn't want to face those consequences right now.
Yeah, in one of our Ask Square part one, he was like, listen, I'm going to tell you what I want to do
Yeah,
and what I'm striving for. And here he's like, no, 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 just leave me alone. Let me do this. I don't want you here. I don't want to have you here. So they're kind of drifting apart, the two of them. So in one of our
yeah,
Ask Square part one, you see them coming together. They're exploring each other as well. And in part two, they're drifting apart.
yeah, exactly. Which then leads you on to the animation where Elizabeth has gone, and this is where um the creature is created, and there's a real lovely piece of instrumentation at the beginning of this before the lyrics kick in, and I love that, and it's been used in quite a lot of the backing kind of tracks for some of their promo and stuff when kind of like idents leaks and stuff like that. But I love the storytelling of this. I mean the opening line of the Votic towers are in position. And then the creature responds, I wish to God you had never begun. This is just another great example of the two characters, having this push and pull against each other with how what they were feeling at the time and what was happening.
Well, I
Um,
think sorry for interrupting,
no, go.
but whilst we're at the beginning, what I love about this song is that it really draws the audience in because the music itself is just this this feeling of, oh my God, it's happening, it's happening, it's happening. So
Yeah,
the excitement, and it really draws you in. It really shows you how excited Victor is. I'm at this point now. Now it's going to happen. Now it's going to happen. So he's so excited, overly excited. Have you checked everything? Uh, thousands of times, thousands of times. Let's do this. Let's do this. So you feel the excitement in the melody itself, in the way that the melody goes and the song goes. Without the lyrics, you can feel this, and I love that. I love it. It
yeah.
draws you in completely.
It really does. And I think about the staging of this because this is where you've got Victor and Frankenstein on in the same song. So therefore on stage together. So this is where you'll have the two actors, presumably. And the way it's written, where Victor says things like the Baltic towers are in position, metallic arcs have slipped. I can see that's him in the flashback. Where he's actually there and he's checking, what am I doing? Is that ready? Is this good to go? That's good to go. Whereas Frankenstein, it's almost like in Dickens' Christmas Carol, where the ghosts have gone back and are watching it from afar, and Frankenstein is there watching, saying, well, have you checked everything? Watch out, be careful, you didn't notice that. And he's almost warning his younger self about what's going on. And I think that's going to be I'm so curious to see how that's going to be played out and how those two characters are going to kind of interact with each other, and how that actually plays out. Because I say in my head, I've got this almost Christmas Carol type feeling about this particular scene, and I don't know why, but that's just what it's just making me think of with how maybe Frankenstein is looking in from the outside, and whether him and Victor sing at the same time, but
He's
presumably
going
Victor
back,
can't see him.
Frankenstein, he's going back to a moment. It is his highlight. It's a
Yeah.
moment of pride. And he
Mhm.
goes back to it like going like, oh my God, yes, I remember this feeling.
Yeah.
I remember this feeling. I was so proud. It was so great. And he's going back to a moment that was a highlight for him. And I think you can see it. It's not like warning him, like, don't do this. This is going to have a bad ending. It's like, just check everything's okay and watch out that you don't get hurt and all this. And you can feel the excitement of Frankenstein as well as he visits this memory, because it is, yeah, I mean, it's a moment of pride for a scientist.
Yeah,
Because
absolutely. And
because he knows at this moment he is going back to this memory that it actually worked.
exactly. And that's ultimately what his goal had become, or always was, for it to work. What I also love about this is that the creature also has a role in this song, and it is the creature, not Adam. So I can only assume again, this is the one, because Adam comes in the next song of Father. So when the creature is here, almost watching on with Frankenstein, so to speak, he's saying things such as, Master, you have forgotten me. Once you start, you can't go back. Look at me, Master. Look at me, Master. He's being ignored. When you see and listen to that in the rest of the song, both Victor and Frankenstein, who are singing in the song, have no interaction with what the creature's saying. He's
Mm.
literally being ignored, because they're
Mhm.
so focused on what they're doing, like you say, and that pride of what they're creating, that he can't be heard. And I also really curious that the creature at this point calls him Master. And then obviously in a
Mhm.
second we'll go into the next song where he actually calls him Father. And I think that's a really interesting thing of difference between master and father, and
Mhm.
why he uses one at one time and another at the other. Um, but yeah, I love that interaction, or lack of interaction, that they
Mhm.
have with the creature, because it just almost starts to show you that frustration he must have been feeling.
Yeah, true. Like Frankenstein is totally absent. He's
Mm,
talking to his younger self, and
yeah,
he's with his younger self in this memory. And the creature is in the present with Frankenstein being absent. He's like, hey, hey, I'm here. We're having
yeah,
this conversation here. Look at me. You've forgotten about me. I'm right here. You've totally forgotten about me. You're in your moment of pride and you don't think about anybody else but yourself.
exactly. Or,
That
or
comes out
starting the
so
galvanic
nicely.
fluid, or applying the divine spark. That's all they're thinking
Mhm.
about. Oh, great. And then that takes us on to Father, which is actually, Adam comes in at the beginning of this, and then the creature as well. And we were speaking earlier about the softness of the opening, which is attributed to Adam, before the more almost staccato and I use the word aggressive, but in the kind of sense of the music, of the creature's point of view. And I find this fascinating, that you've got both, again, these two different ages of characters and development of the characters, and how they tell the story. What's your take on this one?
I love the way Adam started. It just showed the innocence of a newborn baby, more or less, because
Hmm.
he is a newborn at this
Hmm.
moment.
Hmm.
And what do many babies do? They reach out for the first thing they see. And that's what we know from the play. Adam reached out for him, he reached out his hands,
Yeah,
literally. And at that moment, Victor was so shocked because the consequences hit him at that moment, that he was just like strapping him to the bed. It says in the lyrics, it was the
hmm,
dissecting table, obviously, and ran away. But the moment Adam came to life, he was just an innocent creature and looking out for, okay, there's someone to hold on to, and someone I just instinctively reach out for. And then the creature comes in the presence, and he said, you can't close your eyes and wish me away and run and hide, because it won't change a thing. I am here now. So you have to take the responsibility for what you did. But Adam, he is innocent. Nothing's happened to him. The world, he's completely new to this world.
yeah,
So I think
exactly. And
it's beautiful. Adam is in the beginning of the journey. He doesn't know what's await him, and Creature has already been through a lot.
absolutely,
So
exactly.
his voice is a lot more raw and full of anger and frustration, and you can hear that beautifully.
Yeah, you really can. And that's where I think the music changes to match that anger. And that's what I love about that. I think it's so clever. And then, of course, you have Frankenstein, who then comes in to say, well, I didn't know what to do with you. Okay, I admit it, I failed you. And that line we spoke about earlier, does that soothe your sense of moral outrage? To me, that almost still makes me think, you're saying, okay, I admit I failed you. But you don't really get it because actually then you go on to make excuses. You say, besides, I was half dead myself. I was delirious with brain fever. And actually, do you know what? I'm just really proud of my accomplishment. So he is almost apologizing, but he's not. He's saying, yeah, I guess
Yes, but
sorry that you felt that way.
yeah, it's a yes, but.
Yeah, isn't it?
But it's the first time he actually acknowledged, I admit I failed you. It's the first time we hear it from him.
Yeah, it is. I feel though that he admits it, but he doesn't almost take responsibility for it either because there's excuses still as to why he did it. Okay, right. Let's move
Yes.
on. Cut this gap out, Verena, because I've paused for a second. I have a drink while we stopped.
Yes.
Yeah, and that then takes us on to No One Loves No One. And so this is Adam, and solely Adam, actually. This is the one track he's on completely on his own. And again, the music changes here to be softer. I love the melody of this one. I think it's beautiful. The kind of almost I don't know what the correct phrase is, but I can only describe them as melodic runs of some of the words. And the lyrics even of the bee loves flowers and the flowers love the bee, honey drips onto the bread. It's a much softer tone here and completely perfect for Adam's character.
Yeah, the child is still innocent and discovers
Yeah.
the world around and it's just all wonders that he sees. And he tries to figure out where is my place within all that. But it's still from a very innocent point of view.
Yeah, exactly. But I think it's important that we see this side of him because it just helps us understand him more. I think to the point you were making earlier that he was this newborn and this innocent creature, and the way they've captured that in this song, I think is just so perfectly placed in the musical, so you can understand. And I actually think, by the way, that when the next kind of few runs of songs, actually starting with this one, No One Loves No One, going into It's Just a Dream by Elizabeth, and then even into Build Me Someone to Love, all kind of it's obviously that particular section of the play, but it tells this softer side and it's more gentler in the way it's presented.
It is, and he asks himself, why do I exist in No One Loves No One?
Mm-hmm.
Did I request the maker from my clay to mold me man? It's like that's the question of the creature. He asks himself, like Adam asks himself, why do I exist? Why am I here? And he realizes that he needs company, that he needs someone. I wish I had someone to love and someone who loved me. I don't have a name. I don't know what I am or why I am. I want answers to this. Why am I here? Why am I existing? And why am I by myself? When I see the birds have the flowers and the father hugs the daughter, everybody's got somebody, but I don't have anyone.
Yeah, exactly. Going on to It's Just a Dream, what's the story here that Elizabeth's telling? Because she's saying that she's almost feeling and expressing her emotions here, and that she's trying to stay calm about how she's feeling with Victor doing what he's doing, but ultimately she's really struggling with it.
I think to me it sounds like he tries to pull him out, saying, "Come on with me. It's just a bad dream. Nothing's happened. Everything's gonna be all right. Come with me. We go away, and things will be okay." So it feels a little bit to me like she is panicking a little bit. because she's aware that something bad has happened, and she tries to pull him away from that.
Yeah, exactly. And she's noticed that change in him, and it is worrying her. You know, she says, "You look through me just like a ghost, and I seem so calm, but underneath there's a storm."
And she also says, just let me know if there's someone else. So she's not sure where he stands towards her. Like, I'm here and I'm here for you, but where are you right now? Are you with me? Are you not with me? Is there something else, someone else? Just tell me. I want to pull you out of this situation and pull you towards me, but I don't know where you stand.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. It's a really interesting part of the play, this, I think, because it ultimately has gone from Elizabeth obviously left at the end of 1/R² Part 2, where she wasn't happy with what Victor was doing, and then it's all been about, you know, Adam, the creature, Frankenstein, Victor up until this point, and suddenly she kind of pops back up at this moment, just so we can be aware of, I guess, what's going on, almost like on the other side of the town. Here's what Elizabeth's feeling, because then it jumps straight back into Adam and Victor, as obviously the two younger characters of the creature and Frankenstein, with build me someone to love. Um, and I think this is a real beautiful story that tells that human connection part of the story that JC has spoken about, where ultimately Adam has seen what life is. He's starting to get experiences or see experiences of others, and he wants to experience them himself. So whilst he is, you know, we know later as the creature angry with what Frankenstein or Victor did, at this point, he's actually saying, "Can you do it again for me? And if you do it for me, I will leave you alone."
But it also shows, like, when you look at the first few lines, but you won't accept me. I'm a dangerous, lonely boy, and only you can fill the void. Won't you fix my heartstrings?
Mm-hmm.
And it all almost sounds like, okay, at, in some way, I acknowledge that I won't get the fatherly love from you that I crave.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that I have someone else. You can do this. You can make sure that I do have someone. And it's kind of not really acceptance, but acknowledgement that he doesn't get the love from his father that he really wants. And the consequence is, give me something else, give me someone else. And that's when he says, build me someone to love. When you can't do it, make sure I have someone who does it.
Yeah, exactly. And at this point, Victor is open to the idea. He's questioning slightly, saying, you know, what if I build her and she doesn't feel the same about you? But he's, I think, open to the idea of it, particularly if it means that Adam will go away and leave him
Yeah.
alone.
But he
Um,
refuses him. The
yeah,
first instinctive reaction is he refuses him because he says, it's madness what you dare to ask.
yes,
So the consequences hit him now. He is aware of what it could mean. Would he really create another creature? So he refuses him instinctively, but then he goes like, but wait a second. When I
mm,
do this, will you go away? That's something I have to think about. Maybe it's not a too bad idea to give you that other creature. And then he starts thinking about it, that it could really relieve him from this situation that he's in right now, so that he just could push everything away. You're out of
yeah,
my life. When I do this, it's actually not a bad idea. And what I think is also interesting, what I thought about when I read through the lyrics, he could still kill the creature, but he's not thinking about it. He doesn't want to destroy his creation, because this is also something he could do. He is instead thinking of going a different way,
mhm,
almost as if he wanted to make sure that the creature doesn't die. He says, creation, I'm proud of my accomplishment,
mhm.
so I'm not destroying it.
Yeah, exactly. So he's almost like, I can get you out of my life without having to destroy you. By going down this route
Exactly.
and building you someone to love. And I think what happens next is ultimately this particular part of the storyline comes back again in Death of the Brides, where we see a change to him and his approach, where he's, like you say, he's questioned it to begin with. Now he's softened a bit, but then turns up Elizabeth with playing with fire, where she again accuses him of playing with fire. And I think ultimately this is what leads him to start doubting again, and hopefully starting to come to his senses about what he's being asked to do. And so when we pause briefly on playing with fire, um, JC and Jimmy have explained that this is a real top power song for Elizabeth and Lily as Elizabeth to be able to really express herself. And this was the last track they wrote on the entire album. It was made up of parts from a previous song. And of course, as we mentioned at the very beginning, this is where the world end reflects through in this song as well. So tell me about your thoughts on this one.
I think the first line is very interesting. Once upon a time, a boy played God.
Mhm.
It's the boy that struck me, because the boy, it, like, to me, it stands for innocence, for exploring without thinking about consequence. I mean, as a child, you climb up a tree, you don't think about falling. You just do it because you love it and you want to explore it. You want to know what is the view from up there. And I think it is very interesting that I chose Once Upon a Time a boy played God, not a guy or whatever, a boy, an innocent human being who just wants to explore something. And that was interesting, the way that it started. And it's really like JC and Jimmy said, this song brings together so many parts of so many other songs in this from the whole album. That's really, really beautiful. Like you said, you have the line, "This is how the world ends." And what is interesting then is when she sings, "Love of my life, you're not a child, you've got a chance to make it right," which, reading between the lines, is more or less her telling him, kill it, because that's the only way. Kill the monster and not make number two.
Mm-hmm.
That to me is like her telling him, you've got the chance to make it right. And that's the only way actually to go, because what else can you do? Do you want to unleash this monster to the world again? Do you want to build another one, a second threat? So you've got the chance to make it right. You're right there. You actually chased the monster to kill him. So what are you waiting for? That
Yeah.
also comes out a little bit, and not a little bit, quite clearly in the song to me.
Yeah.
And she
That
then
cries out
says,
to me.
there's no excuse. I'm telling you.
Mhm.
That's the next line.
Yeah, exactly. And then ultimately the next line is, this is how the world ends. And she's saying, this is so serious that if you don't listen to me, then you are gonna cause the end of the world, because what does this set in motion? If you know, if you continue to create another one, then what happens? And I guess when we get into, in a second, Death of the Brides, that's ultimately, I think, where the conversation goes with Adam, where Victor himself says, you know, what if you reproduce, your devils would walk the earth? You know, no, I can't do it. And I think this is, like I say, where playing with fire is almost Elizabeth finally getting into his head to think about what he's doing. And then when you move on to Death of the Brides, which interestingly has Frankenstein and Victor and Adam in it.
I think
Um,
that's when the flashbacks collide with the present.
yeah,
And that's
tell
why
us a
you
bit
see
about
all the
that.
characters, they're coming together.
Mhm.
Like Adam, who, not Adam, Frankenstein and Victor. Like Victor, who has denied and who doesn't want to see the responsibility and the consequences, but it's dawning on him, it's coming to the forefront of his mind.
Yeah, and I think this is where has now worked out what's going on, and Adam obviously goes back to Adam rather than the creature, because this is that from his point of view, this is the flashback again where he's saying to create me, you know, as someone and something, you know, and Victor is saying to him, I'm exhausted, let's put this off, we'll do it tomorrow. And Adam's so desperate, saying, no, I can't wait till then. And again, I love this push and pull between the two characters, and in this instance, Victor and Adam, of this almost conflict of what's right and what's wrong. And ultimately, whilst Victor is now feeling this is wrong, it's not that Adam's wrong, because ultimately Adam is who he is, and he just wants someone to love. I just also love musically how this is sung by Cardi. I just think the way that his passion comes through, and that line I mentioned earlier about, if you reproduce, your devils would walk the earth. No. Oh, wow. What a mic drop moment that is.
That's true. And he's so torn. He's so torn between the responsibility that he feels and that tells him not to do it, and also the scientist that already created this wonder once and he could do it again. So this really collides, I think, and it's also beautiful to see this conflict that's going on in his head. That's what Cardi really beautifully brought out in the way he performed it.
Yeah, absolutely. And then talking about beautiful performances, the very end of this song, Adam saying, I'll be with you on your wedding night. And it's obviously this is where Victor has said, no, actually, no, I'm not going to do this for you. And so Adam is ultimately then, I think well, not ultimately, it's not that I think there is a threat there to say,
Yeah,
right, you're not going to do this for me, then you wait till you marry Elizabeth, because I'm going to be there. And the way it's sung in such a haunting manner with the whistle at the end as well.
yeah,
Just it's it's haunting.
yeah. It gives you chills immediately. It
Mm.
makes you want to look behind your back.
Yeah, absolutely. It really does. And for me then it's just that's that real clash of the two of this particular song. And this is why I think I've spoken previously and said that this one's a really surprising song, because you go from this really soft entrance to this really crazy part again, which actually is Adam, not the creature at this point, where you've got this more staccato type feel to it, and then you end again on this haunting things, which ultimately takes you into the final scene and the final song, which is Don't Go, I'm Not Ready Yet, which is ultimately Diana, perhaps you could just explain a little bit about this in the play, but I believe this is where Frankenstein has now died. He's got the answers that he needed, and actually this is the creature as he is in the present day saying, as much as I've had this push and pull with you and these questions and this struggle, at the end of the day, you still are my father and my creator. And we almost found an understanding from each other. And he doesn't want him to go. He doesn't hate him.
Exactly. What I'm
Yeah.
really curious is how are they going to fill the in-between? Because you do have Adam from the song before going, I'll be with you on your wedding night. And throughout all the songs, we haven't witnessed the death of Elizabeth yet. That's missing in here. That's missing in here. So you've got the threat, and then you have Don't Go. So I think in between, I'm really curious to see how they fill this up, because and that could have been another song, really. The death of Elizabeth. I think it's another scene in the play, at least to me, that is like one of a very pivotal, a really important scene, because it is when Elizabeth dies that Victor really decides, and now I'm going to chase him down. And now I'm going on this hunt. I'm going to chase him down and I'm going to kill him. That's the actual moment when he decides to really go after the creature, not to ignore him, but he really sets out to get him and kill him. And I'm surprised, actually, that there is no song for that. Because that's the only thing that I think is actually missing. And the only way you actually realizes that this is missing is when you've read the play. You don't see it on the album when you don't have that background knowledge.
Mhm.
But this is what it is missing. I would really like to know why they haven't made this situation into a song. Because it's
Yeah,
another very big decision and another very big moment in the whole story.
absolutely. And there must be a reason for it. You know, there's obviously, we say there's been the thought about the scripts in addition to the actual songs, the staging of it, whether that is through use of actually set or screens or holograms or lighting. But you're right, it does end on, you know, or go jump from this threat of I'll be there on your wedding night, which ultimately he is. He is there on his wedding night. He kills Elizabeth. And as you say, that leads to then Frank or Victor wanting to chase down
I
the
think it's been on the
creature.
back of his mind ever since the creature killed William. That's the first
Mhm,
one that he
mhm.
kills. And it's been on the back of his mind. But when the story goes forward and there are more killings and he sees what the creature does, the really like the kind of drop, the last drop that brings the bucket to the overflow is actually the killing of Elizabeth. But it builds up over time. It's coming more and more to the forefront of his mind. I cannot ignore the situation. I have to do something about it. But no, I don't want to. I just don't want to think about it. And the killing of Elizabeth really pushes him over the edge when it comes to I have to really set after him. I have to hunt him down.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. But you know what? Whilst it's missing in how we review and analyze the album, I kind of like the fact that there's questions unanswered because it means when we do go and get to see this show be made, we're going to have these questions answered, if not before. And it almost it's it's almost like we know this story so well, but actually there's a part here, if you have only listened to the album and not read the play and don't know the story, that leaves you something also to be surprised with, which I think a lot of people going maybe because not everyone would have read the actual play. And so I think that's quite nice that there's that open ending. And I say it must be purposeful for a reason. I can only imagine it's because of something to do with the actual staging of it.
Yeah, it
Everyone
will
is
be
going to read the
interesting to
book
see.
though.
Sorry, Verena?
Everyone is going to everybody is going to read the graphic novel though once it comes out. So by the time the play comes on stage, everybody will have seen the graphic novel, which will
Yeah.
Well, yeah, indeed, and I guess maybe the same people who are listening to the album, and then but then you will obviously have your other theatre goers who won't be, you know, kind of diving into that kind of background, I guess, like we are, as well. So and that's I think the other thing about this is this is going to appeal to such a wide audience of those who really know this story and love the story, and those who will be just brought on the journey with everyone else.
It will be interesting to see what they're actually keeping from the original play, because this could be
Mm,
like a piece that is inspired by the play, but it doesn't mean that they are taking on everything that's in the play. So it still leaves room for changes.
yeah,
So that's going to be another interesting thing to
yeah,
see what they're actually
yeah.
keeping and what they're not keeping and what they're changing.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And because that then I think leads us on to that final scene and you know, with Don't Go, I'm Not Ready Yet. You know, the last lyrics of the song are you know, I'll never understand, I can't start over, so I'll keep you forever, forever. And that's when Jimmy has described ultimately the supernova being created, the end of the world, which takes us back to the beginning of the the play and the beginning of the album. Um, and that kind of full circle moment, I think, which almost is finally, you know, the story has been told, and we've got all the answers to some respects, and it ends as it began, or as we were told it was going to be at the beginning.
Yeah, what's also beautiful with this song is that it shows no matter how old you are never ready when you lose your parents. It's your
Mhm.
parents.
Mhm.
You are never ready when they're leaving you. I was 42 when my mum died, and I didn't feel, you cannot feel ready for this moment because they are such a safety net for you. They are the ones you can go back to, ask questions, feel safe, go to when you're feeling insecure. Of course, it depends on the relationship that you have with your parents, but that's what you ultimately want. You want they are your ultimate safety net that you can always rely on, no matter how old you are. You always go to them for guidance. And that also shows beautifully in this song.
Yeah, exactly. And I think also when you take that back to even Broken, and Elizabeth sings, losing a mother is all part of life, but there's nothing gentle in saying goodnight. And that was, I think, her explaining to Victor about his experience losing his mother. And now down in the last song of Don't Go, I'm Not Ready Yet, it's the creature feeling the same way about his father.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, that is 16 songs on this album, and like we say, we've kind of, I guess, delved into the background of it and how it links to the story and the play, um, which I hope is interest to people listening. I mean, for those who didn't know the story, I hope this kind of makes you want to go and read it, because we really recommend getting a copy of the play. You can order it online. But I think also then there is, just the side of appreciating, as we said at the very beginning, the actual album itself, and the fact that this is the first time in 20 years, aside from a couple of NSYNC songs recently, that we've been able to hear something, so lengthy from JC, since 2004 when Schizophrenic came out. And with the addition of Lily and Cardi, it's a real treat for anyone, I think, regardless of how much they know of the story, just to be able to hear these three voices and JC's again.
I cannot wait for the live performances.
Yeah, well, what comes next, hey? They're talking about potentially doing a concert in 6 months' time.
Within 6 months, Jimmy said he's hoping that they're gonna be able to do something within 6 months.
Yeah,
Oh
I mean,
my
Jimmy
gosh.
called it a concert, but then JC is going a tour. So is he I don't know when he says tour, if he's talking about the tour of the actual play or a tour of this concert,
Of the
that they're
concert.
gonna do. Because,
Curious.
I mean, the ultimate goal for them, they want to get it on stage, but I think the ultimate goal for them is to get it onto Broadway and to the West End. And that's not a tour. So the
No,
dream would be the West End and Broadway, I would say.
That's true.
yeah.
That's
But
not a
like
tour.
JC pointed out, they're not very patient. They
No,
want it out there.
I agree. And
You
this
can't
is,
get the musical right away. At least put it on stage,
yeah.
like
Yeah,
as a
exactly.
concert.
Yeah,
I'm
but
down.
then that is what they wanted to do, right? And whether that's in New York to link with Broadway, or whether it's in London. And I think they both JC and Jimmy appeared on the I'm Not a Theatre Snob podcast, which is a UK podcast, and they were speaking about this. And there was a really interesting edit in there, and I don't know whether you guys heard it, but they mentioned the word London, and it is immediately cut, and the sound then changes to a different part, but they didn't quite cut out the word London. So there is something there. I was listening to them today and my ears peaked, and I literally rewound it. I went, huh? Did they just say London? And they tried to edit that out and they didn't. And they did. So maybe there's going to be something in New York and London, which would link perfectly to both Broadway and the West End. Whether that counts as the tour or not is to be, I guess, revealed. But
The
there's
tour
this,
of New York and London, yes.
yeah, the world tour. It's left North America, so it counts.
Yeah.
We'll take it. Us European NSYNC fans are only too too aware. Yeah, I think the future is exciting, and whatever is to come, I am so thrilled at the response they've had. The reviews they've had from critics and those in the industry have been overwhelmingly
Absolutely, yeah.
positive. The response from, of course, as you would imagine, the NSYNC fans, but I put a post on social a while back, which is that we don't just blindly support JC because he's JC. And I think that's what you've almost seen from people's comments is, yeah, you're going to have people who just love him for what he does, but you've seen people really grab this with both hands and dive into it, and they're not just going, oh, doesn't he sound great, and oh, did you see the new photos, doesn't he look good? People are really getting into the emotion and meaning and feeling of this. And I love the support that Jimmy is getting as much as JC as well.
What I really love to see is I've seen a couple of JC or NSYNC fans, and some of them posted the only reason why I was listening to this album was because I wanted to hear JC. And then some of them pointed out that their favorite song was actually one of the fans' favorite song was "This Is How the World Ends." And there's not much of JC in it. And I've seen quite a couple of postings that pointed out songs as their favorites, and JC wasn't even in these songs.
Yeah.
And that's just wonderful to see because they're really diving into the project itself, and it starts to become more about, at least that's how I feel, more about the musical and this album itself, and not just about the fact that thank God JC's singing again. And I would buy whatever he does. It could be a telephone book. And that's something I really, really love to see.
Yeah, exactly. And I think he will love that too, because he wants to be recognized for his songwriting and his production and the talent of the other singers on this album and the talent of Jimmy. It's not just about him as far as he is concerned. And I really hope he's happy with the fact that the fans seem to be embracing that on the whole, and really kind of supporting the entire project and not just him.
What will also be interesting to see is there are a couple of musical nerds out there. I haven't heard much from them yet. And I'm curious to hear what their response is, because we're coming from the NSYNC fandom side, so to speak, from the JC fandom side, and they're coming from the musical theater side. And I'm curious to see what they say when those comments come up, and when we see those comments, what they have to say, because they've got a completely different approach to the album.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I really want to hear from their side as well, because I think at the end of the day, they are going to be the majority of the audience.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's where the large numbers are. They're not within the fandom, as much as we like that to be the case. I think the majority of the theatre goers will come from the musical theatre side and not from the fandom side. So it is important that we get the attention to these people, because he already has the attention within the fandom, of course. But they are the ones we have to pull in and bring this attention to them.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we've seen from some of the podcasts and some of the kind of written press reviews from the general theatre industry that there has been a positive response. So to keep seeing that through the fans of the theatre and musical theatre, I hope that kind of starts setting them on a good in a good place to start listening to this album and picking it up. And obviously, if there's anything we can do, albeit as NSYNC and JC fans, to make sure the word spreads wider outside of just us. And I think also that comes with their promotion as well, and then making sure they're picking these channels to reach that wider audience. But we'll certainly do anything we can to make sure that everyone hears this and doesn't just support it because it's JC from NSYNC.
Yeah, it's the demand from the people, from all of the people outside, from the theatre goers, that will also make it a little more easy for JC and for Jimmy to find collaborators. Because when I'm investing in a show like this, and I already see the demand, it is an easier decision for me to go and say, listen, I'm interested in bringing this to my theater or whatever it is, from a producer's side. So the louder we are, and the louder the people who are interested in seeing this as a musical are, the better it is for the whole project.
Yeah, exactly. Well, there you go. It's been said. Guys, we've run out of time, can you believe? But I think we've covered so many topics today, and I hope everyone can obviously see or hear our passion for this project. Let's see what happens next. I know that we're going to be waiting with bated breath. So every step of this journey we'll be on, and obviously any updates we can give you guys listening at home, we will certainly be updating you. Mentioned it's Halloween, obviously, so it's the perfect time. Go and have a listen. Go and make sure you're streaming the album. You can buy the CD now. It is available on Broadway Records, and also on Amazon and other outlets as well. If you do buy it, make sure you still stream it, because obviously once you've purchased it, you've purchased it. So make sure we keep getting the stream count going up as well. Because if you've got a choice between listening to your CD or online, definitely choose online, but still purchase. Other Halloween news before we go, obviously, is Lance, and the fact that Trick or Treat on Scary Street is out at the moment as well. And so just because we're celebrating all things Halloween today, if you haven't got a copy of that as well, go and get that too. Diana, how can people stay in touch with you if they want to reach out and talk more to you? How can they reach you on socials?
I am on Instagram mainly, and my handle is maddies.corner. And I'm open for any kind of conversation. I'm curious to know what you think about it, what it makes you feel, the whole album, how you reacted to the individual songs, and what messages do you see, and what are your expectations? How do you see it on stage? Like everything that we've talked about, just find someone, talk about it, and express your visions and your points of views. And it will be interesting to see where we are on the same page, where we might have different ideas. And that's the beauty of it. It's something to talk about. It's something to connect about. And I'm really looking forward to what's ahead.
Brilliant. Well, listen, go and give Diana a follow. Also, we've got to say a big thank you to Farzana for joining us earlier as well. And you can connect with her NSYNC Millennial as well on Instagram. So make sure you go and give her a follow as well, because she also has some great content. And I think Playing with Fire is going to be something that we're all focusing on. Talking of which, of course, you can follow us, the NSYNC UK Space Cowboys street team, on all of our socials as well, including Instagram. But also, we have set up a new Playing with Fire page as well, where you can find us. We are the PWF Musical _fan page. Come and give us a follow there as well. It's a really interesting platform for us to have somewhere special and unique to talk specifically about anything Playing with Fire. Not just kind of mixed in with all the rest of our NSYNC news. So if you're not doing so already, you can follow us on both. Make sure you give this podcast a rating and share it with your friends. But otherwise, Diana and Farzana, thank you for joining Verena and I today. And we'll look forward to continue this conversation. But for now, we're going to have to say bye.
Yeah, bye. Happy Halloween.
Bye.
Bye. Happy Halloween. Thanks for tuning in to the NSYNC UK Space Cowboys podcast. If you loved this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell button so you'll never miss a moment of the action. And did you know you can also stream every episode the second it drops on your favourite music or podcast platform? It's that easy to stay in sync with us. And while you're at it, check out our Instagram page for all the latest NSYNC news, reaction, and announcements of upcoming episodes. Don't miss out, and we'll see you next time.